Do you ever wonder what it was like to be old way back in the medieval times between the 5th and 15th centuries? Did people just fade away, or did they hold surprising power and wisdom? What did medieval writers think about folks who had seen a lot of years? Number 8. The Wife of Bath, Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, late 14th century. She steps onto the literary stage in Geoffrey Chaucer's collection of stories, The Canterbury Tales, a character who truly dominates her own narrative. Her name is Alisoun, though she is known to readers simply as the Wife of Bath, and she is a woman of considerable experience, particularly in the realm of marriage. Described as being somewhat deaf, a consequence of a blow from her 5th husband Jankin, she presents a striking figure, a woman who has certainly lived a full and eventful life. She has a gap between her teeth which in medieval physiognomy was sometimes thought to indicate a lustful nature, or one prone to travel. She wears a broad hat as big as a shield and scarlet stockings, a clear sign of her wealth and her willingness to flaunt it. Her shoes are new and she has a bold face, red and handsome. She rides her horse easily, and upon her head she wears a coverchief or head covering, so heavy and finely made that it weighs 10 pounds. The Wife of Bath has traveled extensively for pilgrimage, having visited Jerusalem 3 times, as well as Rome, Boulogne, St. James of Compostela, and Cologne. These travels were not common for women in her time, and they speak to her adventurous spirit and her independence. She is a successful clothmaker, so skilled that she surpasses the weavers of Ypres and Ghent, major centers of the cloth trade. This occupation provides her with a source of income that allows her a degree of autonomy, rarely seen in women of the period. Her marital history is a central part of her identity. She openly states that she has been married 5 times, all at the church door, which means her unions were legitimate and publicly recognized. She explains that she believes biblical injunctions to be fruitful and multiply allow for multiple marriages, and she takes full advantage of this interpretation. In her prologue, the Wife of Bath delivers a lengthy and passionate discourse on marriage, sex, and the subjugation of women. She holds firm opinions, shaped by her own experiences about the nature of men and women and the dynamics of their relationships. She claims that she has always managed to control her husbands, either through cunning, argument, or by simply outlasting them. She speaks of her first 3 husbands as good because they were old, rich, and easily manipulated. She says she would accuse them of things they never did, like wanting to sleep with maids to gain power and to extract gifts from them. She would withhold sex, making them desperate for her affection. And then, once they had complied with her wishes, she would resume her wifely duties. She openly admits to using her body as a tool of persuasion, a weapon in the battle of the sexes. She asserts her right to enjoyment and pleasure, a radical stance for a woman in the medieval period. Her 4th husband, she admits, was a reveler, someone who enjoyed company and spending money. She found him exciting, but she also made him suffer. He died while she was on pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and she says she wore black for him, but not for long. It is with her 5th husband, Jankin, that her story takes a dramatic turn. Jankin was a clerk, a scholar, much younger than her, and initially she was deeply in love with him. He was a handsome young man, and she describes how he once read from a Book of Wicked Wives, a collection of misogynistic tales that described women as deceitful, lustful, and disobedient. This book contains stories of Eve, Delilah, Clytemnestra, and other infamous women who brought ruin upon men. Jankin would read these tales to her every night before bed, mocking her and her sex. The Wife of Bath's anger finally boiled over when Jankin read about a wife who killed her husband by slipping poison into his drink. She was so enraged by the misogynistic content that she tore 3 pages out of the book and punched Jankin in the face. He in turn struck her back, causing her to become deaf in one ear. She fell to the ground, feigning death, and when Jankin, remorseful, came to comfort her, she delivered a powerful speech about how she would never be beaten again. She told him that if he struck her again, she would truly die and he would be guilty of murder. He was so terrified that he threw the book into the fire and granted her sovereignty over his life. From that point on, she claims they lived in peace and happiness with her holding complete control. This moment marks a critical turning point in her life, a demonstration of her resilience and her demand for respect and power within her marriage. The wife of Bath is not just a character. She is a voice, a personality that leaps off the page. Her age, though not explicitly stated in numerical terms, is clear from her long history of marriages and her extensive travels. She is presented as someone who has accumulated a vast amount of practical experience and worldly wisdom, contrasting sharply with the theoretical knowledge often presented by male scholars of the time. She challenges conventional medieval views on women, marriage, and sexuality, advocating for female agency and pleasure. Her frankness about her sexual experiences and her desire for control is startling even today, and it certainly would have been so in the 14th century. She openly admits to being driven by her chambre of Venus, her sexual appetite, and she asserts her right to enjoy it. Her tale, which follows her prologue, is an Arthurian romance about a knight who is condemned to death for assaulting a young woman. He is given 1 year and a day to find out what women most desire. After a desperate search, he meets an old, ugly woman who promises to give him the answer if he agrees to marry her. The knight, out of desperation, accepts. The old woman reveals that what women most desire is sovereignty over their husbands and their lives. The knight returns to court, gives the answer, and is saved. He then marries the old woman, but he is horrified by her ugliness and low birth. On their wedding night, she asks him if he would prefer her to be ugly and faithful or beautiful and unfaithful. He, having learned his lesson, tells her to choose for herself, thus granting her sovereignty. At this, she transforms into a beautiful young woman, and they live happily ever after. This tale reinforces the central theme of the wife of Bath's prologue, the desire for female sovereignty. The old woman in the tale is a powerful figure, wise and capable of transformation, suggesting that age can be a source of wisdom and magical power. The wife of Bath's character is often seen as a proto-feminist figure, challenging the patriarchal norms of her time. She is complex, often contradictory, and undeniably human. She is not a passive victim, but an active agent in her own life, shaping her destiny through cunning, wit, and sheer force of will. Her portrayal by Chaucer, with all her flaws and strengths, offers a glimpse into the diverse experiences of women in the late medieval period, and highlights the ways in which individuals might push against societal expectations, even in a world that often seemed rigidly defined. Number 7. January, Geoffrey Chaucer's The Merchant's Tale. Late 14th century. In the same collection of stories, the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Another older character takes center stage, though with a vastly different outcome and portrayal than the wife of Bath. This is January, the main character of The Merchant's Tale, a story told by the merchant, who is himself unhappily married, and prone to bitter reflections on the institution of matrimony. January is a wealthy knight from Pavia in Lombardy, and he is 60 years old. Despite his advanced age, he has never been married, preferring instead to indulge in a life of pleasure with various women. However, he suddenly decides that it is time to take a wife, to have an heir, and to live a respectable married life before he dies. He believes that marriage is a holy sacrament, a paradise on earth, and that a young wife will bring him ultimate happiness and comfort in his old age. January is depicted as deeply foolish and blind to reality, both literally and figuratively. He seeks not a partner, but a submissive young woman who will cater to his every whim and validate his patriarchal ideals. He consults with his friends and advisors about his choice of a wife. One of his friends, Plaispot, flatters him, agreeing with his every decision and praising his wisdom. The other, Justinus, a more pragmatic and experienced man, tries to warn him against the dangers of marrying a young woman when he is so old. Justinus points out that a young wife may not be faithful to an old man, and that marriage is full of sorrow and trouble. He advises January to consider his decision carefully, and to choose a wife of his own age, or at least a widow, who has experience in managing a household. However, January, blinded by his desires and convinced of his own good judgment, dismisses Justinus's warnings. January's of a grumpy old man. January's vanity is apparent in his selection process. He parades young women before his eyes like items in a shop, trying to find the most beautiful and docile. He wants a woman who is young and fair, someone who will be warm wax and easily molded to his will. He dismisses potential brides who are too old, believing that they will not be as beautiful or as passionate as a young woman. His primary concern is his own pleasure and convenience, not the compatibility or feelings of his future wife. He eventually chooses May, a beautiful young woman, much younger than himself, whom he believes will be his perfect submissive companion. Their age difference is immense, and it becomes a central source of the irony and tragedy in the tale. The wedding of January and May is described in detail, a lavish affair with great feasting and merriment. However, the private reality of their marriage is far from the paradise January envisioned. On their wedding night, January performs his marital duties with great effort, struggling due to his age and feebleness. The narrator explicitly states that May finds the experience unpleasant and repulsive. She lies beside him feigning sleep and secretly despises him. January, however, is completely oblivious to her true feelings. Convinced that he is a vigorous and pleasing husband, he continues to believe that May is a loyal and loving wife, even as the narrative reveals her growing dissatisfaction and eventual deceit. A young squire named Damien, January's servant, falls deeply in love with May, and she in turn develops an affection for him. Their secret romance blossoms right under January's nose, a clear sign of his blindness and the precariousness of his marital bliss. January, in a cruel twist of fate, suddenly goes blind, a literal manifestation of his earlier, figurative blindness to the realities of his marriage. This physical ailment makes him even more reliant on May, and he becomes intensely jealous, constantly holding her hand and refusing to let her out of his sight. He fears that she will betray him even though he cannot see her. He believes that if he cannot see her, she cannot deceive him. A foolish notion. The climax of the tale takes place in January's private garden, a walled paradise that he has created as a symbol of his ideal marriage. He often brings May there, enjoying the fruits and flowers, believing it to be a sanctuary of his happiness. Unbeknownst to him, Damien has found a way to secretly enter the garden. One day May tells January that she has a craving for pears, and she asks him to help her climb the pear tree. January, being blind, places his foot on May's back and helps her climb into the tree. While he is below, supporting her, May, with Damien's help, takes advantage of the situation. They engage in a sexual act in the tree right above January's head. At this exact moment, Pluto and Proserpina, the king and queen of the underworld, who have been observing the events from a distance, intervene. Pluto, out of pity for January, decides to restore his sight. January's sight is suddenly restored, and he looks up to see May and Damien in the act. He cries out in shock and horror. May, quick-witted and deceitful, immediately concocts a lie. She claims that she was told that the only way to cure his blindness was for her to struggle with a man in a tree. She tells him that she was merely trying to restore his vision, and that his sudden sight is proof that her strange remedy worked. She even suggests that his restored vision is imperfect and causing him to see things that are not there, or to misinterpret what he sees. January, despite witnessing the act with his own eyes, is so eager to believe her and so deeply in love with her that he accepts her explanation. He is convinced that his vision is still blurry, or that he misinterpreted what he saw, and he tells her she is his true wife. He embraces her and leads her back to the house, still believing in his paradise and her faithfulness. January's Portrayals serves as a cautionary tale about lust, folly, and the dangers of marrying for the wrong reasons, particularly in old age. His age makes his desire for a young, beautiful wife seem pathetic and unrealistic. He embodies a type of old man who seeks to recapture youth through a young partner, but who ultimately fails to understand the complexities of human relationships. and the true meaning of love and fidelity. His blindness, both literal and metaphorical, is a key element of his character, highlighting his inability to see the truth about his marriage and a deception unfolding around him. Chaucer presents him as a pitiable and ridiculous figure whose desires lead him to humiliation and a false sense of happiness. Number 6. Merlin, Thomas Malory's Le Morte Arthur. Late 15th century. In the sprawling epic of Arthurian legend as compiled and shaped by Sir Thomas Malory in Le Morte Arthur, the figure of Merlin stands as an ancient and enigmatic presence. He is a magician, a prophet, and a wise counselor, a guiding force in the early life and reign of King Arthur. Merlin's age is not merely a chronological detail. It is deeply intertwined with his power and his knowledge. He is portrayed as being incredibly old, having lived for many centuries, possessing a vast store of ancient wisdom and magical abilities that transcend ordinary human understanding. His origins are shrouded in mystery, often linked to supernatural parentage, which explains his extraordinary abilities and his foresight. Merlin is introduced early in Malory's narrative as a key figure in the lineage of King Arthur. He advises Uther Pendragon, Arthur's father, and orchestrates the circumstances of Arthur's conception and birth. He knows Uther's desire for Igraine, the wife of the Duke of Cornwall, and uses his magic to transform Uther into the Duke's likeness, allowing him to lie with Igraine. In return for his aid, Merlin demands that the child born of this union be given into his care. Thus, Arthur is born and immediately entrusted to Merlin, who ensures his upbringing in secrecy and prepares him for his destiny. Merlin foresees that Arthur will become king, and he arranges the famous test of the sword in the stone, ensuring that only the rightful heir can pull it forth. As Arthur grows and eventually claims his throne, Merlin remains by his side as his chief advisor. His counsel is invaluable, guiding Arthur in battles, political decisions, and the establishment of the Round Table. Merlin possesses a deep knowledge of the future, a gift that allows him to warn Arthur of impending dangers and to guide him towards auspicious paths. He often speaks in riddles or prophecies, his words carrying a weight of ancient knowledge that Arthur and his knights do not always fully comprehend until events unfold. He helps Arthur secure Excalibur, the magical sword, and its scabbard, which prevents its wearer from losing blood. He also helps Arthur to choose his queen Guinevere, though he warns Arthur of the future sorrow that will come from this marriage. Merlin's age is not characterized by physical decline or weakness. Rather, it is a source of his immense power and wisdom. He is often depicted as having a long beard and a venerable appearance, a symbol of his ancient lineage and profound knowledge. He is able to transform his appearance at will, appearing as a young man, a beggar, or a wizened old man depending on the situation. This ability highlights his magical prowess and his detachment from ordinary human limitations. He is a figure who seems to exist outside of normal time, observing the unfolding of human events with an almost detached, omniscient perspective. Despite his wisdom and foresight, Merlin is not infallible, and his ancient age eventually leads to his undoing. He falls deeply in love with Nimue, a beautiful young lady of the lake, who is one of his own students. Merlin, despite his prophecies about his own downfall, is so smitten with her that he reveals many of his magical secrets to her. Nimue, however, does not reciprocate his love, but rather uses his affection to learn his spells and enchantments. She grows weary of his constant pursuit and his old age. Merlin, blinded by his affection, leads her to a place where a rock hangs over a cave, a magical spot. There, Nimue, using one of the spells Merlin taught her, traps him forever in the cave, or in a thorn bush, or beneath a stone, depending on the version of the legend. Malory describes Merlin's imprisonment as a consequence of his own infatuation, and the irony of a powerful prophet being unable to prevent his own fated end. He is sealed away, not dead, but held captive, his ancient wisdom and magical abilities now rendered useless to the world. Merlin's absence from Arthur's court marks a significant turning point in the Arthurian saga. Without his guidance, Arthur and his knights begin to make mistakes, and the kingdom gradually descends into moral decay and ultimately war. Merlin's long life and eventual disappearance underscore the transient nature of even the greatest power and wisdom, and the tragic inevitability of fate. Merlin's portrayal is that of the quintessential ancient sage, the wise elder who guides and advises. His advanced age lends him authority and credibility, positioning him as a figure who has witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations and accumulated knowledge beyond measure. He is a master of illusion, a shapeshifter, and a conduit of mystical forces. His ability to foretell the future makes him an invaluable asset to Arthur, but also a figure of tragic awareness as he knows his own fate and the eventual doom of Arthur's kingdom. Malory's depiction of Merlin emphasizes the unique blend of power, vulnerability, and ancient wisdom that defines this iconic character, making him one of the most enduring and fascinating old characters in medieval literature. He is a reminder that age can bring not only wisdom but also a certain kind of vulnerability, especially when passions interfere with reason, even for the most ancient of beings. Number 5. Count Ugolino della Graditesca, Dante Alighieri's Inferno. Early 14th century. Within the terrifying circles of hell as imagined by Dante Alighieri. In his epic poem The Inferno, one of the most harrowing portrayals of an old character is that of Count Ugolino della Graditesca, found in the ninth circle, the circle of treachery, specifically in the Antenora, where betrayers of country are punished. Ugolino is presented in a chilling state, Archbishop Ruggieri. This image is one of the most memorable and disturbing in all of literature, and Ugolino's age, combined with his horrific fate, creates a profound sense of tragedy and despair. Dante and his guide, Virgil, encounter Ugolino and Ruggieri, frozen together in the ice of Cocytus, with Ugolino locked in his gruesome act of eternal revenge. Dante describes Ugolino's gaunt appearance and his ravenous hunger, which mirrors the hunger he suffered in life. Ugolino lifts his head from the terrible meal to speak to Dante, revealing his story with a voice choked with grief and hatred. His tale is not merely one of political betrayal, but one that involves the utter destruction of his family, particularly his innocent children and grandchildren. And it is in their suffering that his age becomes most poignant. Ugolino was a real historical figure, a Pisan nobleman who was accused of treachery and imprisoned with his sons and grandsons in the Muta Tower, a tower in Pisa. His betrayer was Archbishop Ruggieri, with whom Ugolino had previously formed an alliance against another Pisan faction. Ruggieri, however, turned against Ugolino, imprisoning him and his innocent family members. Ugolino recounts how, during their imprisonment, the tower was suddenly walled up, cutting them off from the outside world and from any hope of food. His narrative focuses on the slow, agonizing starvation of his family. He describes his sons, Gaddo, Nino, and Brigada, and his grandsons, Anselmuccio and Ugolino, the younger, all innocent and helpless, trapped with him in the tower. He speaks of their growing hunger and their piteous cries. He recalls seeing his children weakened by hunger, asking him for bread, their eyes full of desperation. He laments that he could not weep, so overcome was he by grief and fear that he simply stared at them in silence, his eyes fixed on their fading lives. One of the most heart-wrenching moments in his account is when his youngest son, Gaddo, asks him, "Father, why do you not help me?" Ugolino recounts that his children offered themselves as food, believing that if he ate them he might survive. "Father, it would be less pain for us if you ate of us," they pleaded. "You clothed us with this wretched flesh, now strip it off." This desperate author highlights the extreme suffering and the horrifying choices presented by their starvation. Ugolino describes how each of his children died before him one by one. Over the course of days, he watched them perish, his age making him unable to protect or save them, leaving him with an unbearable burden of guilt and helplessness. The description of their deaths is brutal. He states that after they were all dead, then fasting did more than grief could do. This line has been interpreted in two ways. Either that his hunger finally killed him, or that he resorted to cannibalism after his children died. The ambiguous nature of this line contributes to the horror of his portrayal. The medieval audience would have been familiar with stories of extreme famine and the desperate acts people resorted to, but the direct implication of a father eating his own children was a profound and disturbing thought, even for the damned. Ugolino's punishment in hell, eternally gnawing on Ruggiere's skull, is a direct reflection of his earthly suffering and his insatiable desire for revenge. His physical state in hell is a grotesque perpetuation of the hunger he endured. His age, which should have brought him wisdom or peace, instead brought him to this ultimate despair and this horrific end. He is not just an old man, but an old man who experienced the profound horror of watching his lineage die before him, a tragedy that would have resonated deeply in a society where family and legacy were paramount. Dante's portrayal of Ugolino is a masterpiece of psychological torment. It is not just the physical suffering that is depicted, but the mental anguish, the crushing weight of having survived his innocent children, and the eternal, all-consuming hatred for his betrayer. Ugolino is a figure of utter despair, his narrative designed to evoke profound pity and horror in the reader. His advanced age, combined with the extreme physical and emotional torment he endures, makes him one of the most tragic old characters in medieval literature. A stark reminder of the consequences of treachery and the devastating impact of political rivalry. Number 4. Virgil, Dante, Alighieri's Divine Comedy. Early 14th century. In sharp contrast to the tormented figure of Ugolino. Another old character in Dante, Alighieri's The Divine Comedy, presents a figure of immense wisdom, guidance, and respect. This is Virgil, the ancient Roman poet, who serves as Dante's guide through the intricate and terrifying realms of hell and purgatory. Though a pagan who lived centuries before the time of Christ, Virgil is portrayed by Dante as a revered figure, a beacon of reason and classical knowledge, whose age symbolizes his enduring legacy and profound insight. Virgil is the first significant character Dante encounters in the dark wood at the beginning of the Inferno. Dante, lost and afraid, is unable to escape the wild beasts that threaten him. Suddenly a figure appears, one whose voice seems weak from long silence. When Dante asks for help, this figure reveals himself to be Virgil, and my parents were Lombards, and both were Mantuans by birth. He then clarifies that he was born sub Julio, meaning under Julius Caesar, and though he lived late, he was in Rome, under good Augustus, in the time of the false and lying gods. This immediately establishes his historical distance from Dante and his ancient lineage. Virgil's age is not merely a number. It represents the accumulated wisdom of classical antiquity. He is the author of the Aeneid, an epic poem that Dante deeply admired and saw as a precursor to Christian prophecy. Dante refers to Virgil as my master and my author, and the one from whom I took the fair style that has done me honor. This reverence is not just for Virgil's poetic skill, but for his moral and philosophical insights which Dante believed could guide him. Throughout their journey, Virgil acts as a wise mentor, explaining the complex structure of hell, the sins of the damned, and the principles of divine justice. Virgil's demeanor is consistently calm, authoritative, and compassionate. He reassures Dante when he is afraid, chastises him when he is overly emotional or hesitant, and provides logical explanations for the bewildering sights they encounter. He navigates the perilous landscapes of hell with an unwavering certainty, his knowledge of the underworld derived not from revelation, but from his ancient understanding of human nature and classical mythology. He often speaks of ancient heroes and myths, drawing parallels between their fates and the suffering of the damned. For example, he explains the story of Minos, the judge of the underworld, or the mythological figures guarding various circles such as Charon and Cerberus. As they descend deeper into hell, Virgil's wisdom becomes even more crucial. He knows the rules of the infernal realm, the proper way to address demons, and the boundaries that even the damned cannot cross. He often uses his authority to command passages or to quell the rage of malevolent spirits. For instance, when Charon, the ferryman of Acheron, tries to prevent Dante from crossing Virgil, simply states, "So it is willed where power can what it wills, and ask no more." This assertion of divine will spoken by a pagan begs his role as a divinely appointed guide for Dante's spiritual journey. Virgil's antiquity also highlights his limitation. As a pagan, he did not know Christ, and therefore cannot enter paradise. He resides in limbo, the first circle of hell, where virtuous pagans and unbaptized infants dwell, experiencing a longing for God without suffering. Active torment, this poignant detail adds a layer of sadness to Virgil's character, as he can only guide Dante so far. His wisdom is immense, but it is ultimately earthly wisdom, insufficient for the divine truths of heaven. When they reach the threshold of purgatory, Virgil acknowledges his inability to proceed further and introduces Beatrice, Dante's true spiritual guide, who will lead him into paradise. Virgil's conversations with Dante often touch upon profound philosophical concepts. He explains the nature of sin, the consequences of human choices, and the order of the universe. He teaches Dante about the concept of free will, the origin of evil, and the distinction between different types of love. His instruction is not dogmatic, but pedagogical, guiding Dante to discover truths for himself through observation and reflection. He often encourages Dante to look more closely at the suffering of the damned, to understand the justice behind their punishments, and to learn from their mistakes. The portrayal of Virgil in the Divine Comedy is a testament to the medieval appreciation for classical learning, and the belief that ancient wisdom could still illuminate contemporary understanding. His age signifies not decrepitude, but a profound depth of knowledge, and a timeless authority. He is the embodiment of reason and human intellect, guiding the pilgrim through the darkness of sin and despair towards the light of redemption. His character serves as a bridge between the classical world and the Christian world, embodying the continuity of wisdom across epochs. His presence validates Dante's journey, offering both a historical and an intellectual anchor for the allegorical voyage through the afterlife. Number 3. The Franklin Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. Late 14th century. Back in the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, we encounter another older character, the Franklin, who offers a vastly different depiction of age, one characterized by cheerfulness, hospitality, and a love for the finer things in life. The Franklin is a wealthy landowner, not of noble birth, but respected for his prosperity and his generous nature. His portrait in Chaucer's general prologue paints a picture of a man who lives life to the fullest, embracing pleasure and sharing his abundance with others. The Franklin is described as having a sanguine complexion, meaning he is ruddy-faced and cheerful, a characteristic often associated with a joyful and robust temperament in medieval humoral theory. He is white-bearded, suggesting his age, and his appearance is well-to-do. His purse made of silk hangs at his girdle, confirming his wealth and his readiness to dispense it. He carries a dagger and a soap purse, symbols of his status and his ability to defend himself. Though he is not depicted as a fighter, his primary characteristic is his boundless hospitality. His house is always open, described as being a fere paradis for those who visit. He believes that happiness consists of delight and pleasure, and his table is always laid with food and drink. It snewed in his house of meat and drinke, Chaucer writes, meaning food and drink were so plentiful it seemed to snow. He has a variety of delicious meals, from baked fish and meat to plenty of bread and ale. His cooks are always ready to prepare new dishes, and his cellars are stocked with the finest wines. He keeps fat partridges in his coop and a plentiful supply of fish in his ponds. He is also concerned with seasonal foods, ensuring that his table reflects the bounty of each time of year. The Franklin is a man who takes great joy in his food and drink, valuing good living above all else. He is generous, not only with his provisions but also with his company, welcoming guests from all walks of life. He sits as a lord in his own house, showing off his wealth and generosity. But he is not ostentatious or proud. He is a true epicure, someone who appreciates the best of everything, and he wishes others to share in his enjoyment. When his cook is not ready with a meal, he is described as getting angry. But his anger is usually short-lived and quickly replaced by his habitual joviality. Beyond his hospitality, the Franklin also holds positions of local authority. He has served as a sheriff and a tax auditor, and he has been a knight of the shire, meaning he represented his county in Parliament. These roles demonstrate his standing in the community and his involvement in public service. His age implies a lifetime of accumulated experience and respect within his social circle. He is not a scholar or a warrior, but a man of practical affairs, deeply rooted in the land and its bounty. The Franklin's tale, which he tells in The Pilgrimage, is a story about a knight, Arviragus, and his wife Dorigen, who are devoted to each other. Dorigen, missing her husband who is away on a quest, laments his absence and worries about the dangerous rocks along the coast near her home. A young squire, Aurelius, confesses his love for her, and Dorigen, perhaps jokingly or to discourage him, promises to be his if he can make all the rocks disappear from the coast. Aurelius, through the help of a magician, makes the rocks appear to vanish. When he demands her promise, Dorigen is distressed, torn between her vow and her loyalty to her husband. She consults with her husband, who upon hearing of her plight tells her to keep her word even if it means dishonor. However, when Aurelius sees the integrity of Arviragus, he releases Dorigen from her promise. The magician, witnessing this act of generosity, also releases Aurelius from his debt. The tale itself reflects the Franklin's values of honor, gentillesse, and the importance of keeping one's word, even in seemingly impossible situations. It is a story that emphasizes mutual respect and generosity within relationships, themes that resonate with the Franklin's own character. His age is not a burden or a source of frailty, but rather a sign of his established position, his comfort, and his ability to enjoy the fruits of a well-lived life. He represents a type of older individual who has achieved a comfortable retirement, surrounded by friends and good cheer. The Franklin's portrayal challenges common medieval stereotypes of older characters, as either ascetic and wise, or frail and senile. Instead, he is a vibrant, life-affirming individual who embodies the joys of earthly existence. His generosity and his focus on shared pleasure make him a beloved figure among the pilgrims and a refreshing depiction of age in a period often associated with austerity. He reminds readers that old age can be a time of contentment, hospitality, and continued engagement with the world, rather than a period of decline or withdrawal. Number 2. Dame Ragnell, The Wedding of Sir Gawain and Dame Ragnell, late 15th century. In the late 15th century, Arthurian romance, The Wedding of Sir Gawain and Dame Ragnell, we encounter a remarkable older character who challenges perceptions of beauty, power, and wisdom. This is Dame Ragnell, an enchanted woman whose appearance is initially described as grotesque and repulsive, yet who holds the key to King Arthur's life and who ultimately possesses a hidden beauty and profound insight. Her age is central to her initial presentation and the subsequent moral lessons of the tale. The story begins with King Arthur out hunting in Inglewood Forest, when he is ambushed by a formidable knight named Gromer Somerjour. This knight, who has a grievance against Arthur, gives him a riddle. Arthur must return in a year and a day with the answer to what women desire. Most, if he fails, sets out to find the answer. As the deadline approaches, he rides through the forest and encounters the foulest creature he has ever seen, Dame Ragnell. Dame Ragnell is described in vivid and unsettling detail. She is incredibly ugly, with a nose that stretches to her chin, a mouth that goes to her ears, yellow teeth, and eyes that stream with tears. Her skin is mottled, her hair is wild and tangled, and her body is misshapen. Her sheer ugliness is emphasized to the point of being a physical challenge to Arthur. Despite her terrifying appearance, she is the only one who claims to know the answer. To the riddle, she demands a high price for her knowledge. She will only tell Arthur the answer if he promises that one of his knights will marry her. Arthur is horrified by the proposal, but with his life on the line, he returns to Camelot to seek a volunteer. Sir Gawain, known for his courtesy and loyalty, steps forward and bravely agrees to marry the hideous old woman to save his king. This act of self-sacrifice highlights Gawain's noble character as he prepares to endure a union with a creature that repulses him. When Arthur returns to Gromer Sommerjord, Dame Ragnell is there. She whispers the answer to Arthur. What women desire most is sovereignty or mastery over men. Arthur delivers this answer, saving his life. Gromer Sommerjord is enraged, revealing that Dame Ragnell is his sister, cursed by their wicked stepmother to remain in her hideous form until she marries a knight of the Round Table, and is kissed by him. The wedding of Gawain and Dame Ragnell proceeds, a somber affair. Gawain, upholding his vow, marries her. On their wedding night, alone in their chamber, Dame Ragnell challenges Gawain. She asks him to kiss her, a test of his courtesy and his acceptance of her as his wife, despite her appearance. Gawain, true to his courteous nature, kisses her at that moment. A miraculous transformation occurs. Dame Ragnell sheds her monstrous form and stands before him as a woman of astonishing beauty. She then explains her enchantment and presents Gawain with a choice, a variation of the classic loathly lady motif. She tells him that because he has broken the spell, she can be beautiful either by day when they are in public or by night when they are alone. She asks him to choose. This choice is a test of Gawain's understanding of sovereignty. If he chooses, he asserts his own will over hers. If he grants her the choice, he concedes sovereignty to her. Gawain, demonstrating his learned wisdom, tells her to choose for herself, stating that he trusts her judgment entirely and wishes only for her happiness. By granting her sovereignty, Gawain completely breaks the remainder of the enchantment. Dame Ragnell reveals that because he has given her mastery, she will be beautiful all the time, both by day and by night. This resolution reinforces the theme that true love and respect involve granting the woman agency and control. The old, ugly exterior of Dame Ragnell served as a trial, not just for Arthur and Gawain, but for the audience, challenging their preconceived notions of what is valuable and what constitutes beauty. Dame Ragnell's initial old and repulsive appearance symbolizes the superficiality of judging by outward looks. Her age, combined with her monstrous form, is meant to test the chivalry and the moral character of the knight. Her transformation into a beautiful woman represents the revelation of inner worth and the power of courtesy and respect to overcome superficiality. She is a figure of wisdom because she possesses the knowledge of what women truly desire, and she orchestrates the events that lead to her own liberation and the moral enlightenment of Gawain. Her character is a powerful exploration of themes of appearance versus reality, the nature of true nobility and the meaning of female sovereignty in a patriarchal society. She uses her initial guise as an old, ugly woman to force men to look beyond the surface and to value inner qualities, like honor, kindness, and respect. Her journey from the loathly lady to the beautiful, respected wife of Gawain illustrates that true beauty and value can be found in unexpected places, and that age or outward appearance does not diminish one's inherent worth or wisdom. She is an old character who is a catalyst for moral growth and a symbol of hidden power. Number 1. The Green Knight, or Bertilac de Haut-Desert, Sir Gawain, and the Green Knight, late 14th century. In the anonymous late 14th century Middle English poem, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, one of the most memorable and enigmatic older characters, is the eponymous Green Knight, later revealed to be Bertilac de Haut-Desert. This figure initially appears as a terrifying, almost supernatural challenger, but his true identity as an elderly, jovial lord of a castle, combined with his role in a complex magical test, makes him a compelling portrayal of age, power, and deception. The Green Knight first bursts into King Arthur's court at Camelot on New Year's Day, a sudden, imposing figure who immediately commands attention. He is described as a giant, incredibly tall and broad, with an imposing physical presence. What truly sets him apart is his unusual color. His skin, hair, beard, clothing, and even his horse are entirely green, a startling and unnatural sight that suggests a connection to nature, magic, or the otherworldly. He carries a huge axe in one hand and a holly branch in the other, symbols of both violence and peace. His initial appearance is that of a powerful, perhaps even ancient being, who challenges the youthful and celebrated court of Camelot. His long, thick green beard is often noted, emphasizing his age and his venerable yet wild appearance. He proposes a Christmas game, a beheading game, where anyone brave enough can strike him with his own axe, on the condition that he can return the blow in a year and a day. King Arthur initially accepts the challenge, but Sir Gawain, Arthur's nephew and one of his most noble knights, steps forward to take his place. Upholding the honor of the Round Table, Gawain strikes the blow, severing the Green Knight's head. To the astonishment of the court, the Green Knight calmly picks up his head, repeats the terms of the agreement, and rides out of the hall, leaving Gawain to fulfill his part of the bargain in a year's time. A year later, Gawain embarks on his quest to find the Green Chapel and meet his fate. As Christmas approaches, he stumbles upon a magnificent castle, Haut-Desert, where he is warmly welcomed by its lord, Bertilac de Haut-Desert, and his lady, Bertilac's beautiful wife, Lady Bertilac. The lord of the castle is described as a burly, bearded man full of mirth and generosity. He is a jovial host, with a long flowing beard that matches his hearty demeanor, suggesting an older, established figure of authority and hospitality. His appearance, while not green, is distinct and commanding. Bertilac proposes a new game. During Gawain's stay, he will go out hunting each day, and whatever he catches, he will give to Gawain. In return, Gawain must give Bertilac whatever he gains within the castle during the day. This exchange of winnings game is played out over 3 days, during which Lady Bertilac attempts to seduce Gawain. On the first day, she offers him 1 kiss, which Gawain gives to Bertilac at the end of the day. On the second day, she offers him 2 kisses, which Gawain again exchanges with Bertilac. On the third day, Lady Bertilac becomes more persistent, offering him 3 kisses, and also a green silk girdle, which she claims will protect him from harm. Gawain, fearing the impending blow from the Green Knight, accepts the girdle, but does not reveal it to Bertilac during their exchange of winnings. He gives Bertilac the 3 kisses, but keeps the girdle secret. When Gawain finally finds the Green Chapel, a strange overgrown mound, he discovers that the Green Knight is waiting for him. The Green Knight raises his axe and delivers a blow. The first swing is a feint, a test of Gawain's nerve. The second swing also misses a second test. The third swing, however, nicks Gawain's neck, drawing a small amount of blood. At this moment, the Green Knight reveals his true identity. He is Bertilac de Haudesert, the lord of the castle. He explains that the entire ordeal, from the initial challenge at Camelot to the exchange of winnings and the 3 blows, was an elaborate test of Gawain's honor and courage, orchestrated by the sorceress Morgan Le Fay. Morgan Le Fay, an ancient and powerful enchantress, had orchestrated the entire plot, not out of malice towards Gawain, but to test the pride and reputation of Arthur's court. She is described as an ancient lady in Bertilac's castle, a very old woman, often contrasted with the young and beautiful Lady Bertilac. Her age signifies her immense magical power and her deep, long-standing connection to the older, more mystical aspects of the Arthurian world. Bertilac, as the Green Knight, embodies the cunning and formidable nature of the test. His dual identity as a jovial, hospitable lord and a terrifying supernatural challenger highlights his mastery of disguise and his profound understanding of human nature. His age, whether in his Green Knight guise or as Bertilac, lends him authority and a sense of timeless wisdom. He is not a malicious figure, but a judge, a tester of virtue, and a figure who represents the mysterious forces that lie beyond the conventional world of chivalry. The Green Knight's role as an older character is crucial to the poem's themes. He represents the unpredictable, often harsh realities that challenge idealized notions of knighthood. His age implies an accumulated wisdom and experience that allow him to devise and execute such a complex moral test. He understands the psychological pressures of honor and fear, and he expertly manipulates events to expose Gawain's deepest vulnerabilities, and ultimately to strengthen his character. The Green Knight, or Bertilac, is a powerful and memorable portrayal of an old character whose age signifies profound knowledge, a mastery of trickery, and an enduring connection to the ancient magical forces of the world.